When we married He Mu Ting Chen, we made a pact. If one day we stopped loving each other, we would throw away the engagement ring, and I would understand. It wasn't until that auction I saw the final item that I knew I had to leave. On October 17 at 6:03 a.m. This was the 10th anniversary of my marriage to Fu Xinian. I don't know when Fu Xinian left, perhaps at 4 in the morning or perhaps at 5, and I seem to have long since been excluded from that tight, interlocking mechanism, becoming a merely dispensable ornament. I slowly raised my left hand, facing the faint light, the 8-carat pink diamond named Stellar Descent on my ring finger refracting tiny, icy gleams as I moved slightly. If one of us stopped loving, we would throw away this ring, and there would be no need to say goodbye. The other would understand at that time. He was not the Fu Xinian who commands the world today. He wore a rented suit that didn't fit him well, but the light in his eyes was hotter than the diamonds at my fingertips. When he spoke, his tone was steady with a hint of youthful stubbornness, as if certain there would never be a day when we would discard it. I remember I laughed and asked, "Fu Xinian, are you giving me the most romantic curse?" He gripped my hand, pressed the ring toward my finger base with such force that I could clearly feel the bones. He said, "No, Wanwan, I am telling you that unless I die, you never need to consider this. I am giving you a weapon you can wield to judge me, the weapon to judge him." I forced a wry smile. 10 years have passed, the weapon seems rusted, and the person who granted it power may have forgotten even its existence. I sit up, barefoot on the cold black walnut floor, the chills spreading from my soles to my heart, giving me a shiver. 10 years. My world has shrunk from the cheers of thousands of spectators to the joys and sorrows of just one person. My piano strings lie silent for him, my melodies end because of him. The steam from the coffee fogs my eyes. I look at my blurred reflection on the window, suddenly feeling unfamiliar. The pale-faced, hollow-eyed woman. Is she really Su Wn, the one who once shone on the stage? The phone on the desk vibrated once, delivering a pushed news briefing with the headline, "Fuji Group market value hits new high. Fu Xinian becomes Asia's youngest billionaire." In the accompanying photo, he wears a sharply tailored deep gray suit, walking beneath the flashbulbs with a calm, indifferent expression, surrounded by countless reporters and subordinates. I silently looked at that face, the face I had loved for 13 years, still handsome, only now with a few sharp, distant lines between the brows, and no longer the starry gaze I once saw in me. I put down my coffee cup, picked up my phone, opened the pinned chat and typed a line, "Happy anniversary." After thinking for a moment, I felt these 3 characters were full of sarcasm, so I deleted them all. In the end, I didn't send anything because I knew that even if I did, the response would merely be a scripted, assistant replied note. "Thank you, Mr. Fu is in a meeting." Between us there had long been a gap, one company, one assistant, and a vast chasm labeled time that no one could cross. At 3 in the afternoon, the butler delivered today's letters and packages, among them a thick envelope sealed with dark gold wax that stood out in particular. I recognized the emblem, the logo of Fu Xinian's Fuji Art Foundation, an abstract iris formed by countless geometric lines, cold and exquisite. Just like him, I pried open the seal with a letter opener, and inside was a finely made invitation and a thick auction catalogue. A Night of Brilliance, the Fuji Art Foundation's premier charity auction, scheduled for October 20, 3 days from now, at the Grand Summit Hotel's banquet hall under the Fuji umbrella. I smiled out of habit. Another such occasion. Since stepping back from acting, my identity had shifted from artist Su Wn to Mrs. Fu, and one of Mrs. Fu's duties was to accompany him to these sociable wine and dine events, accepting the admiring or inquisitive gazes of others. Like a perfect piece of art board, I flipped through the copper plate printed catalogue. The air was perfumed with the scent of expensive ink, from the masterpieces of the Impressionists to medieval royal jewelry, each piece valued beyond wealth. Fu Xinian's business maps had long extended from technology and finance into the realm of art collection, the field most capable of signaling status. These things meant nothing to me. I was merely another collection he had amassed, a treasure long left untouched. My fingers casually turned the pages until I reached the final centerpiece. In that instant, my breath seemed to be gripped by an invisible hand, and the world's sounds vanished. I could only hear my own heart pounding frantically, beating against my fragile eardrums. thudding one after another. On that page, a high-definition photo occupying the entire spread came into view. The photo lying quietly on the page, a pink, droplet-shaped diamond, was flanked by countless tiny diamonds, set in a platinum mount, radiating a dreamy yet blinding glow under the photography lights below. Elegant serif text annotated, LOP 88 stars fall, 8 carats natural vivid pink diamond ring. Sourced from an unnamed individual, this diamond ring carries a passionate and moving past, the ultimate crystallization of love and beauty. Now the client hopes its radiance can unlock new value, illuminating the artistic dreams of more children in mountainous areas. Opening bid, HKD 80,000,000 Nebula, my own nebula, this ring on my left hand's ring finger. Exactly the same as it. No, that's impossible. My first reaction is absurd self-denial. It must be a coincidence. Or perhaps Fu Xinian deliberately replicated it as a gimmick for the auction. No matter how he changes, he could not have done such a thing. My hand trembles violently, almost unable to hold that heavy catalogue. I take the ring off, bring it close to my eyes to compare carefully with the photo in the catalogue. From the cut facets of the main diamond to the ornamental abbreviation S&F engraved in a cursive style on the inner side of the ring band that only the two of us know about, every detail is exactly the same. Blood seems to crystallize in an instant, limbs grow cold and stiff. I am like a drowning person enveloped by a vast icy sea, unable to breathe, unable to think, only able to keep sinking, falling into endless darkness. With a trembling hand I unlock my phone, open Fu Xinian's chat, fingertips hovering over the screen, typing and deleting and typing. I saw the catalogue for the 4-year auction. What happened to that starfall piece? Too much like an interrogation. He would be impatient. Dear, I see a lot in the catalogue that resembles my ring. Is this the surprise you prepared? Too humble, like a fool begging for pity. Finally I take a deep breath, gather all my strength and type the calmest sentence I can. Is Miss You busy? I received the dazzling night catalogue on the last page, the auction item. I want to ask about it. I stare at the screen, waiting. 1 second, 2 seconds, every second stretching like a century. 5 minutes later the screen finally lit up. Not a call, not even voice, only a line of cold, emotionless text. In a meeting, have the assistant handle the trivial matters. With the 2 characters trivial matters, he lightly glossed over all my fear, doubt, and heartbreak. Our engagement ring, the witness of 10 years of marriage, that sacred token of the covenant about love and not love, had in his world become a trifling matter to hand over to the assistant. I look at that line for a long time, until my eyes ache and my sight blurs. I can almost imagine the moment he sends the message, sitting at the head of a huge conference table, slightly frowning, listening to reports of dozens of billions in projects, while tapping the phone with one hand, eyes devoid of any emotion. I suddenly laugh, a silent laugh, but tears fall drop by drop onto the phone screen, blurring that dazzling line of text. It turned out he hadn't forgotten that promise. He was simply announcing to me, and to the world in a crueler, more decorous way, that he was throwing our love away with a price tag attached. I didn't reply. I silently typed the word fine, then thought better of it and deleted it, knowing he wouldn't care. I turned off my phone, tossed it onto the sofa, stood up and walked step by step back to the bedroom. My steps were eerily steady, so steady that I surprised even myself. That's when I understood when a person's heart is utterly dead. There is no hysteria left, only a silence as still as stagnant water. Nothing is more tragic than a dead heart. In that moment, I finally understood. I didn't try to contact Fu Xinian again, nor any of his assistants. I knew that the door called communication had long been shut by his own hand, and knocking on it again would only make me look pitiful. I stood in the enormous walk-in closet for a long time. It was filled with the season's haute couture from every major brand, each piece worth a fortune, symbols of the glory and glamour of being a rich wife. Fu Xinian never stinted on material things for me. Perhaps he thought that with these expensive fabrics, he could wrap me into a carefree porcelain doll. But he didn't know that what I missed most was the white dress he bought with his first project scholarship in college. The love in his eyes back then was more precious than all the finery in this entire closet. My gaze finally landed on a suitcase in the corner, the one we used on our only trip together to Interlaken, Switzerland. Snow-capped mountains, lakes, lush green meadows. It was as beautiful as a fairy tale. Fusinian said then that when he retired, we would buy a little wooden cabin there, and I would play the violin, he would paint, and we would spend our remaining years in peace. That promise, like the ring, ultimately became empty words. I opened the suitcase and began to pack. I didn't take any of the couture gowns or the priceless jewelry. I only gathered a few of the simplest everyday clothes, a few of my favorite sheet music books, and the only photo I have of myself and my grandmother, in which she looks so kindly. He always said, Wonwan, in this life, you can lose anything, but you must never lose your spirit. Then I walked into a room in this villa that even Fusinian had nearly forgotten, my studio. After 10 years of silence, it was almost sealed by dust. The air was faintly scented with old wood and rosin. I walked to the center of the room and lifted the white dust cover. Off the black piano, my Stradivari lay quietly in its velvet-lined case, its body glowing with a warm amber luster even in the dim light. I reached out a fingertip and gently brushed across its surface. The cool, familiar touch struck me like a faint electric current. I could almost hear it whispering in my ear, asking me, Su Wn, do you still remember me? Do you still remember who you are? Of course I remember. I am Su Wn, not a rich wife. I am Su Wn, born for the violin. I closed the violin case and left it behind. I knew it didn't belong to the coward I had become. Only when I found myself again would I deserve to let it sing for me once more. I opened my computer, logged into the airline's website, and my fingers flew across the keyboard, swiftly entering the information: destination Vienna, departure October 21st at dawn, passenger Su Wn. The sound of the one-way ticket payment confirmation rang out like a crisp, liberating chime. After finishing everything, I leaned back in my chair and let out a long sigh, as if the boulder that had weighed on my heart for a decade had finally been lifted just a little. I didn't cry, nor did I laugh. Inside, there was only an unprecedented emptiness and calm. Fusinian, our story needs to end. I will not confront you, I will not argue with you, and I will certainly never let you see even the slightest hint of my disgrace. But to desecrate the beautiful time we once shared would be to trample on the last shred of my own dignity. Since you have chosen a grand auction as your farewell, then I will attend. I will sit in the audience wearing a veil like the most ordinary guest, and watch with my own eyes as you hammer down the final price on our love. I will applaud you and offer you my sincerest blessings. Then I will turn around and, in the way you taught me, completely discard myself from your world. I looked at the woman in the mirror, dressed in a simple white cotton dress, her long hair loose, her eyes as calm as a deep, still lake. I gave her a faint smile as if bidding a final farewell to an old friend. Goodbye, the Su Wn who loved Fusinian deeply. From tomorrow onward, the wealthy wife will cease to exist. Only Su Wn will remain, a Su Wn about to be reborn. Outside the window, night has fallen, and the lights of Victoria Harbour flicker on one by one like a grand and lonely fireworks display. I know this will be the last night I spend in this gilded cage. The ballroom at the Summit Hotel is the brightest jewel in Fusinian's business empire, but my gaze landed on the woman beside him, Jiang Yingyu. She was wearing a moon-white Greek-style gown, her hair loosely tied at the nape, revealing her elegant swan-like neck. At that moment, a sharp and delicate pain seized my heart. The auction began quickly. One treasure after another was brought onto the stage and snapped up by the celebrities and tycoons in the audience at astonishing prices. My eyes remained fixed on Fusinian, seated in the very center of the front row with Jiang Yingyu at his side. Occasionally, he would lean over to whisper something to her, and she would respond with a knowing smile. At one point, an impressionist painting came up. Jiang Yingyu seemed interested, and Fusinian raised his paddle without hesitation, securing the painting for far above its estimated value. The moment the hammer fell, the light in Jiang Yingyu's eyes shone brilliantly. I watched the scene before me, and suddenly I was reminded of a time long ago when I was still a student. I had my eye on an extraordinarily valuable antique bow. At the time, Fusinian was still a penniless entrepreneur, yet without a second thought, he sold the only thing his mother had left him, a watch, to buy that bow for me. He said, Wonwan, your dreams are more important to me than anything else. Could the man he was back then and the man he is now truly be the same person? What kind of catalyst is time that it can corrode a person's deep affection beyond all recognition? Next will be our final and most anticipated lot of the evening. The auctioneer's sonorous voice pulled my thoughts back from that distant memory, and my heart clenched sharply. I knew the moment of reckoning had arrived. The stage lights dimmed, leaving only a single spotlight on the slowly rising display stand. Resting in the center of the velvet tray, the pink diamond ring named Falling Star lay silently, its nearly otherworldly brilliance shimmering under the beam. A stifled gasp of wonder rippled through the room. Now please welcome Mr. Fu Sinian, chairman of Fuji Group and founder of the Fuji Art Foundation, to personally introduce this unique treasure. Amid thunderous applause, Fu Sinian rose, adjusted the hem of his suit, and calmly walked onto the stage, taking the microphone. His deep gaze swept slowly across the room before finally settling on Jiang Yingyu in the front row. With a tenderness in his eyes I had never seen before, he could not see me. In his world I no longer existed. Good evening, distinguished guests. His magnetic voice traveled through the speakers, filling every corner of the hall. It was the same voice that had lulled me to sleep on countless late nights. Yet now each syllable felt like an ice-cold blade, piercing my heart with terrible precision. The ring before you is named Falling Star. Its value lies not only in the top-tier 8-carat fancy intense pink diamond, but also in the story behind it. He paused, as if gathering his emotions. The audience held their breath, waiting for that touching tale. Beneath the hem of my dress I clenched my hands, nails digging deep into my palms. The sharp sting helped me maintain a fragile composure, preventing a complete breakdown in front of everyone. It represents a passionate and beautiful past. A gentle warmth of nostalgia enters Fu Shan's voice. It has witnessed the purest oath, and once shone at the most radiant moment of a life. Its previous owner was a respected artist who regarded this ring as an eternal home. My body began to tremble uncontrollably. How dare he describe a cruel betrayal in such a soft tone? However, time changes many things. He shifted tone with a philosophic lament. Truly great art should not be locked away in private memory. Its brilliance should be seen by more people, and its meaning should be elevated. He raised his finger toward that ring like a messenger of pity and compassion. So today we present it here, hoping that the warmth and beauty it carries can be transformed into a broader love. May its glow illuminate the artistic dreams of more children in the mountains, giving them a chance to pursue a brilliant life. This is the best tribute to that beautiful past. As his words fell, a thunderous, enduring ovation erupted from the audience. Everyone was moved by his grandiose rhetoric, praising his broad mind and benevolent deeds, and Jiang Yingyue's eyes were filled with unabashed, fanatical adulation. I alone sat in this sea of applause like someone drowning. A tribute? No, Fu Shan, this isn't a tribute. This is the most splendid public humiliation you have meticulously prepared for me. You have packaged our love, our vows, and 10 years of mutual support into a fine commodity, affixed a noble label of charity to it, and right there in front of the whole world, you personally auction it off. The applause faded as the auctioneer returned to the stage, his voice brimming with excitement. Thank you, Mr. Fu, for that wonderful speech. The bidding for Starfall now officially begins, with a starting price of 80 million Hong Kong dollars, and each bid must increase by no less than 1 million. My mind went blank, staring at the tiny, sparkling ring on the stage. I could only feel how absurd it was. It had once been the center of my world, the source of my sense of security. I had believed it was more important than life itself. But now it had become nothing but a series of cold, ticking numbers. 81 million, 85 million, 90 million. Below, wealthy bidders raised their paddles one after another. Amid the overlapping calls, they were not chasing past memories or promises but merely symbols of wealth and taste. Fu Sinian had already returned to his seat, raising his glass to gently clink it against Jiang Yingyue's beside him, his posture elegant and composed. He didn't even spare another glance at the ring on the stage, as if it were truly just an irrelevant item up for auction. My gaze cut through the shifting crowd, fixed intently on him. Fu Sinian, do you really not remember anything at all? Don't you remember the trembling of your fingers when you slipped it onto my hand back then? Don't you remember the look in your eyes when you said, unless I die, you never have to think about taking this off? Don't you remember our sacred promise about love and its absence? Has all of it truly slipped your mind? My chest felt as if it were crushed under a massive boulder, so tight that I could barely breathe. A sweet, coppery taste rose from deep in my throat. 100 million. A low voice rang out, pushing the price to a whole new level. The entire room erupted in murmurs. I followed the voice and saw an unfamiliar middle-aged man in the third row raising his paddle, his expression one of absolute determination. 110 million. Another voice quickly countered, unwilling to back down. The price climbed higher and higher, each number landing like a heavy hammer on my heart. Then suddenly, the pain stopped, the sharp, piercing ache vanished, replaced by a numbing, bone-deep cold. I felt like a detached observer, calmly watching the absurd scene before me, almost finding it laughable. So the love I had guarded with 10 years of my youth and dedication was worth just over 100 million Hong Kong dollars in their eyes. 150 million, Mr. No. 18 bid 150 million. Is there a higher bid? The auctioneer's voice trembled a little. This price had long surpassed everyone's expectations. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the 18th bidder. 150 million 1 ST time, 150 million 2 ND time. The auctioneer raised the small wooden hammer, sweeping the room for a final confirmation. My gaze lingered one last time on Fu Xinyan's face. He remained calm and unattached, as if nothing to do with him. He even turned his head slightly, whispering something to Jiang Yingyu, a faint smile on his lips. At that moment, the last trace of a ridiculous flicker of hope in my heart was completely extinguished. I lowered my head, opened a familiar chat on my phone. My fingers no longer trembled, and I calmly typed out the words that had circled in my heart countless times. Our agreement, you did it. Goodbye, Fu Xinyan. Just as I pressed send, the little hammer hanging over my heart on the stage dropped with a heavy thud. Bang! A crisp, decisive crash filled the hall. Sold. Congratulations to Mr. No. 18. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause again. I stood up, not glancing at anyone again, tucked the phone back into my purse, pulled the veil over my head and headed for the exit. My steps had never been so firm. As I walked through the cheering crowd celebrating a successful auction, through the crowd moved by the magnificent charity show, no one noticed the true protagonist of this story, the woman who had her love publicly auctioned off. As I stepped out of the banquet hall, the corridor's air conditioning gave me a shiver. I drew in a deep breath for the first time in a long while. The air was free of that suffocating scent, a mingling of champagne and lies. How wonderful! The reception after the auction lasted late into the night. As the host, I was inevitably drawn into a whirlwind of social obligations, smiling faces, flattering words, glasses of champagne offered one after another. I handled it all with ease, yet felt a deep weariness beneath the surface. Jiang Yingyu stayed by my side the whole time. He is clever, always knowing the right moment to deflect unnecessary trouble for me, or using his unique insights into art to steer dull business conversations in more interesting directions. He is a good partner, and a pleasant companion. Fu Xinyan, you look a little tired. As the reception drew to a close, Jiang Yingyu thoughtfully handed me a glass of warm water. Tonight was a great success. The foundation will surely be very grateful to you. I took a sip from the glass. The warm liquid slid down my throat, but did nothing to dispel the inexplicable unease in my chest. It's fine, I replied indifferently. For some reason, ever since the auction ended, my right eyelid had been twitching non-stop, and I felt an emptiness in my heart, as if I had forgotten something important. What was it? I couldn't remember. Perhaps I was just overtired from work lately, a bit on edge. The last guests left at 1 in the morning. The driver pulled the car up to the hotel entrance, and I asked him to take Jiang Yingyu home first. Fu Xinyan, aren't you coming along? Jiang Yingyu asked, surprised. I have some documents to go over. I'll stay at the hotel tonight, I replied, making up an excuse on the spot. I simply didn't want to go home, didn't want to face that empty, tomb-like house, didn't want to face Su Wan's eyes, always carrying a hint of sorrow I could never quite understand. Back in the presidential suite, I ripped off my tie and flung myself onto the soft sofa. I pulled out my phone to check today's stock market, but the moment I unlocked it, I saw Su Wan's unread message. Our agreement, you kept it. Goodbye. The message was sent at 10:30 in the evening, the exact moment of the Starfall hammer. I frowned. Another one of those rambling, emotional messages. What mood is he in now? Is he upset about something? It's just that I didn't tell him in advance about auctioning the ring. A small thing really, why make such a fuss? The ring has been in the safe for years. Rather than let it gather dust, I figured I'd take it out to contribute to the foundation. What could be wrong with that? I grew impatient and scooped the phone aside, deciding not to pay it any mind. Women are like that, always blowing minor matters into huge problems. Especially Sue WN. Since she stopped being a violinist, she has become more sensitive and increasingly dull. I closed my eyes, but the word agreement kept flashing in my mind. Involuntary what? Agreement, a vague and distant image like something seen through frosted glass, a small Seattle church, a white wedding dress, and her eyes shining wildly when she put on the ring. It seems we once said something, but I can't recall the exact content. After all, that was a decade ago. A successful business person wouldn't let old memories without business value occupy his brain. He'll figure it out himself, I tell myself, just like countless past quarrels. As long as I ignore it, in a couple of days he'll act as if nothing happened, continue to prepare my breakfast and take care of everything at home. I've always thought he couldn't live without me. The next day, after handling the company's urgent matters, I returned to the villa atop Taiping Hill in the evening. I pushed the door open, but the hallway motion-activated light didn't come on as usual. I called out Sue WN, but there was no response. The house was deathly quiet, so quiet that I could hear dust drifting in the air. I frowned, pressed the switch on the wall, and as the lights came on I realized the whole home was unusually tidy. It was too tidy. On the coffee table in the living room, there were no longer the music scores and magazines she would casually leave there. On the sofa, the cashmere blanket he had used while napping was gone. In the kitchen, the familiar aroma of the stew wafting from the slow cooker had vanished. Even the bouquet of white roses in the entryway vase was nowhere to be found. This didn't feel like a home at all, but rather an expensive model apartment with no residents. A strange, intense unease sprouted from within me, like vines rapidly twisting around my heart, tightening with every beat. I walked quickly up to the second floor and pushed open the door to the master bedroom. The bed was immaculately made, the corners of the duvet tucked in neatly like hotel room service at a five-star resort. On the nightstand sat the velvet box she had always used to hold her jewelry, the one adorned with an iris in its design. Now, utterly alone, I walked over and, as if possessed, opened the box. Inside was nothing but a folded white note, lying quietly on the dark blue velvet. My hands trembling, I picked up the note and unfolded it. On it was her elegant yet resolute handwriting, just 6 short words, Fu Sinian. I threw it away. Boom, my brain exploded like a bomb had gone off. Blank in an instant, the promise I had deliberately buried deep in my memory now crashed into my soul with thunderous force. If one of us ever stopped loving the other, they were to throw away the ring. No need to say break up, the other would simply understand. I understood. But how could this be? She loved me so much, how could she have stopped? This must be her throwing a tantrum, a prank she orchestrated to get back at me for auctioning off the ring. Yes, that had to be it. Like a madman, I rushed into the walk-in closet and pulled open the wardrobe that belonged to her. Empty, every piece of clothing she often wore was gone. I then stormed into her studio. The Stradivarius she cherished as her life was still there, but all her sheet music, the scores she had copied by hand and marked up, was gone without a trace. Finally, I dashed back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and frantically dialed her number. Sorry, the number you have dialed is powered off. The cold, robotic female voice echoed again and again through the silent room like relentless, mocking laughter. Just as I was about to be consumed by overwhelming panic, my phone suddenly rang, an unfamiliar number, clutching it like a lifeline. I answered immediately. Hello, Sue WN. Hello, am I speaking to Mr. Fu Sinian? Came the calm, measured male voice on the other end. This is the West Kowloon District Police in Hong Kong. We would like to confirm whether a white Maserati with license plate M888 is registered under your name. That was Sue Wan's car. Yes, I said, my voice dry, barely sounding like my own. What happened? Mr. Fu, here's the situation. This afternoon we found this car by the Sea and Land Tour. The car door wasn't locked. There were no signs of a struggle inside, but only one powered-off phone on the driver's seat. The owner, Ms. Sue WN, is currently missing. Based on Thean, the last known time the vehicle appeared, we preliminarily determined that Ms. Sue WN may have committed suicide. Please come to the police station as soon as possible to assist our investigation. These 2 sentences hit me like 2 hammers, smashing hard against my temple. I held my phone rigid, unable to move. Outside the window, night had long since enveloped the city. The lights of Victoria Harbour remained bright and bustling, Yet my world at this moment had all the lights extinguished. In the West Kowloon police station, white walls, white lights, the air thick with the scent of disinfectant and cheap instant coffee, everything felt utterly alien to the world I knew. I sat like a puppet drained of its soul, stiffly on a cold plastic chair waiting for further police information. My brain refused to think, refused to accept any information. I kept telling myself, this is a nightmare, a ridiculous nightmare. When I wake up, Su Wn will be serving hot milk, smiling, saying, "Nyan Nyan, you had another nightmare." Fu Sinian, a roar of anger that shook the heavens pulled me out of my self-imposed trance. I looked up and saw Lin Zhe charging toward me. He wore a dusty black trench coat, a handsome face full of grief and savagery. He is our mutual college friend from when Su Wn and I were students, now a world-renowned top conductor. I don't know how he got the news or how he could rush back from Vienna so quickly. Before I could speak, a wind-swept fist slammed hard into my left cheek. I was knocked to the side, the strong smell of blood instantly filling my mouth. My glasses flew off and shattered on the ground. "You bastard, you still dare to sit here." Lin Zhe grabbed my collar and dragged me up from the chair. His eyes were full of blood, like a furious, hungry beast about to tear someone apart. "I ask you, where is WN? What did you do to my Wanwan?" His voice, torn by extreme anger and sorrow, became hoarse and distorted. Several officers immediately stepped forward to try to pull him away. "Mr. Lin, please calm down, this is the police station." "Calm down, how do you want me to calm down?" Lin Zhe shook off the officer's hand, pointing at my nose and questioning me word by word. "Do you know what she did? Do you know what Wanwan gave up for him?" He turned to me, the hatred in his eyes almost flaying me alive. "Fu Xian, tell me, do you remember what Su Wn looked like 10 years ago?" She was the most dazzling genius in the entire music academy, not just in the classical music world. The chief conductor of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra personally invited her to join, saying she was born for the violin. But what about her? For you, this poor boy with nothing. She gave up the Golden Hall, gave up the whole world stage, followed you to this desolate place. She thought she had married love, thought you would be her lifelong support, but you what? Did you give her a gilded cage or a global live auction of her love for you? Each of his words was like a burning nail hammered into my marrow. The auction, so he really did go. Do you think that by giving her the best material life, she should be grateful, be a good wife and stay by your side as your rich wife? Lin Zhe sneered, yet tears slid down his cheeks. "You selfish to the bone bastard, you don't understand what she truly wants. Do you know what day her father died was?" I stared at him in confusion, my mind an empty slate. 13 years ago, on the day your company's IPO celebration banquet was held. Lin Zhe's voice choked with sorrow like a crying cuckoo. "She was alone in the hospital, watching him take his last breath. She called you 20 times, exactly 20 calls, Fu Xian, and you did not pick up once. What were you doing at that moment? Celebrating with your partner, your beautiful executives, in the IPO party, basking in everyone's congratulations. You even had your assistant message her, telling her not to bother you with trifles. 20 calls. Are they trifles?" My heart was being tightly clenched by an invisible hand, then crushed piece by piece. I staggered back a step, leaning against the cold wall to barely keep from falling. It turned out to be that day. I remember that night I had drunk a lot, and when I got home I saw Su Wn sitting on the living room sofa, her eyes red and swollen. I asked her what was wrong and she only shook her head and said, "Nothing, just watched a sad movie." I believed it at the time, didn't notice anything. And that auction, Lin Zhe's voice was as deep as a judgment in hell. "Do you know what that ring means to her? That's not a diamond, Fu Shan, that's her faith in your love. The last shred of faith shattered by your own hands, Fu Shan." If Wanwan really got into trouble, Lin Zhe stepped closer to me, raising a finger to my heart, his voice oozing with the most vicious curse. "I tell you, you are the real killer who killed him. You will go to hell." I don't know how I left the police station. Each word from Lin Zhe felt like a scorching branding iron, deeply engraving itself on my soul, leaving an indelible ugly scar. Returning to the villa atop Taiping Hill in the early hours, my steps finally stopped at a tightly closed door that was his studio, a door I had almost forgotten existed. A creak sounded like a sigh breaking the stillness of the room, and the scent of old wood, rosin, and faint dust rushed to my face. It wasn't the familiar Mrs. Rich's rose and vanilla scent, but something cooler and purer, belonging only to the artist Su Wn. Everything felt vaguely familiar, Yet completely strange, that black piano stood silently in the center of the room, draped in a white dust cloth like a sleeping black beast. Along the walls stood towering music stands, all empty. I knew he had taken every last sheet of music with him. My gaze finally settled on an unremarkable little stand beside the piano where a half-filled staff paper lay open. My heart jolted violently, and I walked toward it as if treading on knife edges, my fingertips trembling with tension. It was a handwritten score, the ink still fresh, clearly a recent work. At the top of the page, in his elegant handwriting, was the title, Our Contract. My breath stopped completely in that instant, as if a bolt of lightning had struck me from head to toe, freezing every drop of blood in my veins. I trembled as I looked at the notes, so vivid under the moonlight. They were like sorrowful black spirits, leaping and arranging themselves across the staves, forming a melody I had never heard before. I couldn't read music, yet I could feel powerful emotions in the arrangement and markings. The opening was a gentle, slightly shy andante, like the first ray of sunlight on a spring morning, warm and full of hope, the melody of our first meeting. Then the music grew passionate and intense, filled with complex chords and swift arpeggios, like a torrential summer afternoon rain, unreserved, burning passion, thee of our fervent love. Then the melody slowed, becoming low and oppressive, with many flats and dissonant intervals, like the lingering cold sorrow of an autumn rain, the time when, after marriage, we gradually drifted apart. The score stopped at the end of a measure, its final note heavily circled in red ink, with the German musical term morendo, fading away until, written beside it beneath the note he had drawn with all his strength, a harsh fractured chord full of ripping dissonance, repeated over and over so forcibly that the strokes had torn through the thick paper, leaving jagged, irreparable scars. Looking at that broken chord, I could almost see him bent over the stand, writing it with tear-filled, despairing eyes. So he had known everything, known my coldness, my perfunctory gestures, my betrayal, and had said nothing. All the hurt I had inflicted on him, he had poured into this silent elegy that belonged only to him. I could no longer hold myself up, my legs gave way, and I collapsed to my knees on the cold floor. I reached out to touch the score, but just as my fingertips were about to make contact, I yanked my hand back. I was afraid that these guilt-stained hands would defile his final effort. Like a lost child, I knelt there in the sacred hall that belonged to him, surrounded by endless darkness woven from his sorrow. I opened my mouth to call his name, but only hoarse, broken sobs, like those of a wounded beast, escaped my throat. I don't know how long I knelt there, until my legs had gone completely numb. Trembling, I took out my phone and dialed the number I had once scorned the most. Hello, Linja's hoarse, wary voice came through the phone. It's me. My voice was as dry as wind blowing across a desert. I'm at my studio in Suwon. A long dead silence followed on the other end. Come over, I said, mustering every last ounce of strength I had. There's a piece of sheet music here, I want to hear it. Linja did come in the end. He didn't lash out at me anymore, but when he saw the sheet music laid out there, his tall frame suddenly swayed. She walked over carefully, as if handling the most sacred of treasures, and lifted the score. As she looked at it, her eyes reddened. But in the end, she had written it, he muttered to himself, his voice filled with boundless sorrow and regret. I spent 10 years trying to persuade her to pick up the violin again, to start composing once more. I thought she had given up. I never realized she had poured every bit of her talent into writing this one farewell song. He walked over to the piano and sat down. Setting the sheet music in place, she didn't look at it, only said softly, Fu Sinian, I'll play it for you. I hope you remember this melody for the rest of your life. Her slender fingers fell upon the black and white keys. The first note sounded gentle, pure, like a clear stream trickling down a mountain gorge. In that moment, the image of Su Wn at 18 appeared before my eyes. She stood on the stage of the university freshman welcome ceremony, wearing a white dress like an immaculate white magnolia. Hello everyone, I'm Su Wn. In that moment, I, standing in the audience, knew I was lost. The music gradually became lively and playful, like sunlight chasing through the trees. I saw her sitting across from me in the library, pretending to read while stealing glances at me from the corner of her eye. I saw the rainy day when I carried her, unconscious from low blood sugar, to the infirmary. She rested on my back, as light as a feather. I saw the night I confessed my love, her eyes shining as bright as if They held the entire galaxy. Then the piano suddenly shifted into something passionate and intense, like surging tides beating against my heart, wave after wave. Those were the years we loved each other most deeply, sharing a slice of pizza in a low-rent apartment in New York, huddling together through the toughest days of starting our business to revise plans all night, and exchanging vows of eternal love in a small church in Seattle. Back then, I believed we would stay like that forever, until our hair turned gray. But gradually the music changed, the passionate melody slowly cooled, and one dissonant note after another, like tiny needles, began to pierce the main theme. I saw myself missing her birthday for the first time because of a business dinner. I saw the fleeting look of loss in her eyes the first time I said, "I'm busy, don't make a scene." I saw her face grow paler and more silent as I began to appear with Jiang Yingyu on the covers of finance magazines. The music grew lower and heavier, like a hopeless winter rain that would never stop. I heard her helpless, muffled sobs in the hospital corridor the night her father died. I heard the sound of her heart shattering the moment she saw the auction catalogue. I heard her sitting alone in a corner on that dazzling night, the dead frozen sea inside her heart. Finally, all the melodies converged at a single point. Linge's fingers struck hard and viciously on a broken chord he had carved with blood and tears. Zheng a sharp, piercing roar filled with tearing anguish and despair, like a poison-tipped dagger stabbing deep into my heart, twisting with all its might. In that instant, my world collapsed completely. I could no longer hold back. I fell to my knees, a desperate beast on the verge of death, and let out a hoarse, inhuman wail. So it was me who had destroyed her life. I was the executioner who had snuffed out her light and pushed her into boundless darkness. After the broken chord, the music stopped abruptly. The room fell silent, leaving only my belated, grief-stricken remorse. I was not qualified to attend Suwan's funeral. All I knew was that Linge took her back to Vienna and buried her in the Zentralfriedhof, where she rests alongside Beethoven, Schubert, and the other composers she most admired. I have become a ghost imprisoned in an empty cage called home. I have begun to search obsessively, almost pathologically, for every trace she left behind in this world. I fired all the servants and cleaned this huge villa myself with the softest cloth. I brushed away the dust from every item in her studio, and discovered a yellowed movie ticket tucked inside her German dictionary. It was The Legend of 1900, the film we watched on our first date. I rummaged through all the drawers, and in the deepest corner, a place I had never opened, I found a small wooden box. Inside there was no jewelry, no famous watch, only a pile of seemingly worthless things: an old watch I had sold, which she had secretly redeemed later, a ticket stub from my university basketball game, the back of the stub written in elegant handwriting, "My youth won the whole world for me," and a thick stack of prenatal ultrasound reports. My hand trembled violently, the reports scattered all over the floor, and I picked them up one by one, from the earliest intrauterine pregnancy diagnosis, to later monitoring of fetal heartbeats, to the last medical bill labeled for abortion. Time froze at the day after our company's IPO celebration and the day after his father's death. In that instant, I felt as if I had been flung into a cryogenic abyss at -50 degrees. The cold seeped from my bones. It turned out that day he had not only lost his father, but also our child, and I, a murderous brute who deserved to be killed 100 times, was completely unaware of it. I went mad, imitating his life, pulling out the recipes he left behind, awkwardly learning to cook his favorite burgundy beef stew. The first time I made the kitchen a mess. The beef was dry and overcooked. The second time nearly caused a fire. The third time I finally made something that tasted decent. But when I served the dish and faced the empty seat, the tears flowed louder than the soup in the bowl. I brought back the white roses that she had loved most, watered them myself every day, trimmed the leaves, watching them go from buds to full bloom, and then to withering away piece by piece, was like watching our love slowly come to an end in my hands. I even paid dearly to redeem that ring from the wealthy businessman who had bought it after the star's fall, but when I placed it back into the empty velvet box, I realized that nothing could be the same without the one who wore it. It was nothing more than a cold, meaningless stone. I began to hallucinate. In the dead of night, I would always hear faint piano music coming from the second floor, the opening melody of our covenant. I would rush upstairs and push open the studio door only to find it empty with only the cold moonlight spilling across the floor. Waking at dawn, I always felt a faint trace of his scent lingering in the air. A blend of rose and sandalwood, but when I opened my eyes, there was only the eternal cold emptiness beside me. I began to suffer from insomnia, lying awake all night staring at the ceiling until daybreak. I dared not close my eyes, because the moment I did, I would see him at 18, at 20, at 28, all looking at me with the same expression, a mixture of disappointment, sorrow, and endless fatigue. Without a word, they would silently stare as if in a silent, never-ending judgment I wasted away, my eyes sunken, even silver threads appearing at my temples. People at the company said the vice president had become a different person. They didn't know that the real Fu Xinian had already died with Su Wan's passing. What remained was merely a walking corpse filled with remorse and memories. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. During this decade, I poured nearly all of Fuji Group's assets into establishing the Su Wan Art Foundation. I tried in this way to fulfill his unfinished dreams and atone for my unforgivable sins. The foundation has supported countless talented but underprivileged music students, some of whom later became internationally renowned performers, shining on stages around the world. Each time, I would sit in the most inconspicuous corner of the audience, quietly listening as if I could hear Su Wan's echo in their playing. In these 10 years, I never set foot in any business setting again, never gave another media interview. I completely detached myself from the world I had once taken pride in, living as an isolated island. My only companionship was the completed piano piece Our Covenant, New Life Chapter, which Lin Zhe helped finish. Lin Zhe eventually forgave me. He said it wasn't for my sake, but for Su Wan's, because someone as beautiful as him deserved music that did not end with broken chords. He recomposed the latter half after the wrenching, shattered chords. He added an extremely tender, healing adagio like sunlight breaking through clouds after rain, with the final movement rising to an eternal luminous C major chord. He said that this was the life Su Wan should have had. Today marks the 10th anniversary of Su Wan's passing, and also the 10th annual memorial concert hosted by the foundation, held at the Hong Kong Cultural Center Concert Hall. I sat in the darkest corner of the second-floor box, watching the theater full of audience below. My hair has long since grayed, my face lined with the wind and frost of years, looking much older than my actual age. The star of the concert is a 17-year-old prodigy girl, the most talented child funded by the foundation. Some say there is the shadow of Su Wan in her playing. Tonight she will perform the Stradivari violin that Su Wan left behind, in full for the first time in front of the whole world. Our Covenant, the New Life. When the girl in a white long dress walked onto the stage, holding the amber violin, the spotlights suddenly brightened and the strings seemed to carry the lingering warmth of 10 years. Not yet dispersed, I clenched the cold ring in my pocket, my knuckles whitening from the grip. Some losses a whole's time can never fill. Just like the melody flowing across the stage right now, no matter how gentle, it cannot bring back the person who once played for me. As the antique violin came slowly onto the stage, my heart tightened as if in a vice. Weirdly similar, not only the sound but even the absorption in the music, the moment of losing oneself in the music, were exactly like the Su Wan of that year. The melodious and familiar tune filled the concert hall. I closed my eyes, letting each note pull me back along the long bitter road called the past. Our lives were like a fast-forward black and white silent film, flashing through the sweet, the quarrels, the warm, the cold moments in my mind, all frozen on the night he left. As the music entered the latter half, that gentle, healing adagio like a warm hand softly smoothed over the scarred wound in my heart, I felt that it was not the girl playing the instrument but Su Wan. It was him using music to transcend life and death, giving me a final gentle farewell. When the last hopeful bright C major chord sounded, the entire concert hall erupted in thunderous, lasting applause. I did not clap, I simply sat quietly, clutching that cold, cannot be given away star-fallen diamond ring. I slowly opened my eyes, and between the stage glare and the blurred silhouettes of the audience, I seemed to glimpse a familiar white dress. 20-year-old Su Wan. She stood there, separated from me by 10 years of life and death, separated by a sea of people, quietly looking at me. Her face carried no sorrow, no disappointment, only a long-awaited gentle, peaceful smile. She did not speak, but I understood her lip movement. Fu Xinyan, I forgive you. At that moment, the mountain of regret weighing on my soul collapsed with a thunderous crash, and an unprecedented ease enveloped me. I looked at her and smiled, and as I smiled, 2 lines of hot tears that had been delayed for 10 years finally slid down her aging cheeks. I slowly closed my eyes again, and in my ears was the thunderous applause, and in front of me was her hand stretched toward me, warm with a gentle light. Wei, wait for me. This time I will not let you go alone.